I've seen a lot of articles, and one of our mutual friends sends me TikToks of people talking about cozy games pretty frequently, and that's not a term that people used like even a decade ago. And I think it'd be interesting to discuss the cultural phenomenon of cozy games and maybe define the genre.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting. I have played a couple of what the internet would consider cozy games. I don't think I've ever sought one out. Yeah, again, like for this title, this type of genre being called cozy games, like I'd never even really thought of that genre, given it a name. But just to work off of a bit of a definition, when you search cozy games on the internet, the first thing that come up under what is a cozy game, games that ditch high octane action for more laid back gameplay. And I think that's quite a big, broad brush to kind of be able to paint with. So probably for the best, but I'm guessing this would mean kind of like way more relaxed on time limits. And in terms of like the actual things you need to do, I mean, the most popular examples are Stardew Valley, Spiritfarer, and some other games like Abzu is listed as one. And Abzu is a game where I think you just casually swim amongst non-threatening sea creatures. So yeah. I suppose lack of combat is one thing.
Seems like
but Spiritfarer had like an action-y bit with like the lightning strike, collecting the lightning bugs. Like, is that? I guess that's not like high octane action, right?
No, it's a mechanic that you have the option of, you can employ the lightning strikes, and then if you need to harvest lightning bugs or whatever it is, I haven't played that game in a while, so. But I do remember jumping around the ship. That's fun though, and it's almost like a mini game in the game. It's not, the entire game isn't just this like intense time trial where you're, have to do everything, within 5 minutes. It's like right. You activate a sequence that then allows you to zip line around. And part of the fun of that particular thing is like, depending on how you have customized your ship and like, you're going to have an easier or harder time depending on how you've created the layout of your ship, how traversable it is. Yeah, I think games that don't... I think a lot of action games wouldn't be considered cozy games. I think they're kind of ruled out because they're like... Especially if it's a real-time combat, if you're just like swinging your sword around and there are no enemies, or the enemies can't harm you, it's a one-way street. I think that would be closer to the cozier sphere of influence. But anything that requires like a health bar that will be depleted and you're going to have to restart from a checkpoint, there's something about that feels inherently uncozy. It's punishing, I
mean, the world itself, like it creates the precedent or the expectation that the world itself has threats in it. So you can't be cozy.
Yeah. I do like the high, like trade. What is the definition you found? Trading high octane.
Yeah, games that ditch high octane action for more laid back gameplay.
For more laid back. Yeah, it's just that definition is so
Kotaku
vague.
Gives a list of 11 cozy games that helped them survive 2021. And I think it'll be good to kind of take a couple of these titles and then sort of see what's lying beneath them that's like similar. New Pokemon Snap, Skatebird, Unpacking, Dwarf Romantic, which I'm unfamiliar with, and Sizable.
Well, Pokemon Snap does have time constraints in that there's, as you're on rails, and as you continue along your trek, which is not really at your own pace, it's at the pace that the cart is set at, you will miss certain things. But there's kind of a replayability in that, when you miss something in Pokemon Snap, you don't feel like super thwarted or, you're not going to be upset. You're just going to be like, okay, well, I'm going to replay this course anyway. So perhaps even like saying that the time constraint isn't really that good of a part of the criterion, I guess.
The argument that's being made for Pokemon Snap specifically in the article against the time constraint thing is like, that's more so self-imposed. It's there because you are on this one track ride, and the more imposed thing is the idea that, I need to take pictures so that Professor Mirror and whoever else can like respect me and give me points. But you're not actually going to like lose life or lose gaming opportunity if you simply ride the ride and take no pictures and look around. You can still go back and replay that same ride immediately. The same Pokemon are going to appear at the same points, and ultimately it kind of breaks the illusion that like, oh, this is happening spur of the moment, I must take a picture. You actually are in a Pokemon amusement park and you can just ride it and enjoy the sight and the views around those Pokemon.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Really, it's saying that instead of being punished, if you miss a shot, it's a lack of a good thing rather than the addition of a bad thing.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think that's a fair way to assess perhaps cozy games in general, right? Like, do these other games like
cozy games are all carrot, no stick.
All carrot, no stick. Have you played Piku Niku?
No, that's on my list, but I've watched a little bit of gameplay for it. Like, that looks pretty cutesy.
Yeah, I was going to say cutesiness in general, I think is, a big aspect of what can make something cozy. Like Piku Niku and like games like Figment, there's something zany about them that makes them feel easily accessible, or like they want to be played in that sense. Figment is a surrealist, like figment of your imagination. It's this like surrealist game that has just your eye is really drawn to look at everything in the like on the specific screen that you're looking at. It's an isometric game, right? And Pokemon Snap is a first-person shooter, essentially, So it's interesting that the conventions of the genre are not dictated by like the point of view of the character, or even like the setting, or any particular themes. It does seem to be about how, like, the level of punishment. It's the opposite of a Souls-like game in that sense. But art, like I think art can really, like, there's something atmospheric about cozy games, right? So we have the lack of punishing, but then the art style has to be somewhat comforting. The music has to be, you don't want an intense, fast-paced beat, You want something that's kind of going to lull you a little bit into something like a hypnotic kind of feel.
Yeah, everything needs to work towards creating the sense of comfort. So Unpacking was definitely a cozy game. Like, I was able to play that when I was like, you know what, kind of need something to unwind. This is something I can play, I can feel stimulated by, but it's not kind of like forcing me to do any particular action in a super quick manner. But more importantly, I guess, like, when I'm in that environment, right? The sound effects, the music, the way everything's presented, it's just putting me into this state of like, things are okay, nothing's gonna hurt you here, just take your time. And like you were saying, like, the music has to be more of a lull type thing, like, that brings you into that state. It doesn't put you to sleep per se, but it puts you in a almost like meditative state of mind. Like, the music can help put you in a meditative state of mind. You performing these like simple actions, such as like clicking the box to open it, and then clicking to grab an item, clicking to put the doll down in the right place. Like, you're just following, I don't know, kinesthetic mantras or something like that, right? Like, as the music comes together and you hear the sound effects and you're just tending your garden, or, you're unpacking your house, you find out like, oh, wow, I'm actually like feeling a lot more relaxed. My breathing's a bit changed, and holy shit, like 20-30 minutes of life just flew by because I got like just so focused on this like small task, but it felt very rewarding to complete. I guess that's another thing with these cozy games, at least from what I can tell, is there is like frequent and or like wholesome sense of fulfillment from them. With Unpacking, you have the very relatable goal of unpacking and like sorting out your apartment, which creates like a great sense of like pride in yourself. Yeah, you have your living space set up, you
and
did it
customized.
how you wanted it to do.
Exactly.
Yeah,
yes.
You got to express yourself. Yeah. And cozy games in general might give you like various ways to express yourself. It's not a mandatory thing, but I think in a large amount of them, we do see that expression, right?
Like Animal Crossing is like the biggest cozy game of the 2020s. You know, I mean, people loved the self-expression in Animal Crossing. You create an avatar that looks like you, figure out which like what furniture
which house
you
is
want.
best yours. Yeah, figuring out how to dedicate your home and stuff. I think even like islands themselves, right? People are able to visit other people's islands and see how they decorated or who they have there. That's
Yeah, and like which villagers you want to keep, even, you know. It's like, oh, I really hate this sheep. Bye, you know.
What else do you want to discuss when it comes to cozy games?
I think we run into some problems with the cozy game. Going back to the definite, you know, we know that there's something about the game being primarily or exclusively carrot based, right? And we know that a cozy atmosphere can be enhanced by the art and music of a game. What about something like Yoshi's Crafted or Woolly World? What about like Kirby and the Forgotten Land? You know, like I'm playing Kirby on the hardest difficulty, and I like have not gotten like a game over yet, and you know I'm pretty far through the game. There are only 2 difficulties, but even the harder difficulty is you know, still really not very challenging, you know, especially when we compare it to other games like Metroid Dread or Tunic or, you know. So it seems to me that Nintendo generally has an aesthetic of being cozier than a lot of at least the other 2 first-party developers.
I would push back on that, actually. Even though the games appear like very sort of like, oh, they're holding a play, or like, this is just a fantastical world, like, in most of their big IPs, like the world itself is not cozy, and the tasks you are doing, while they don't have like a very explicit like you're gonna die or like
they're not high octane.
Yeah, they're not high octane, but you still have a Goomba coming at you, and you're gonna get harmed if you don't move out the way.
You think that there's enough threat that you wouldn't classify them as cozy? But the argument that I'm trying to advance is that they are cozy enough with soundtrack and with visuals. Like with the Crafted World is the whole environment of that. The way that they had to think about, it's like, this is going to be a construction boot, and now let's put a bunch of construction boot, you know, types of props or, you know, set design basically, you know, that speak to the fact that this is a boot, you know. It seems to me like the fact that it's mostly carrot, you know, it's not an incredibly punishing game by any means. Nobody's going to confuse this with, you know, a game meant for like hardcore gamer adults, you know, or like exclusive to hardcore gamer adults.
Right.
It's kid friendly, right? And it's beautiful. It's got a innovative art style, and it's meant to promote a chill vibe more than it is to promote a like aggression or frustration or really any kind of intense emotion that's not positive. And some games do the opposite, where they're trying to evoke from you, it seems, some kind of frustration, so that because overcoming your frustration and beating the game anyway is the relief that the person will eventually feel, right? This is like the formula for like Souls games that we've been talking about. Right. But in a cozy game, they don't want you to feel that wall of frustration, right? It wouldn't be cozy if it required that you feel frustration. And I feel like Yoshi is an example of something that's kind of on the line, where it's like, yeah, there are enemies, and like I don't really know how to classify like the Yoshi's Crafted World, because there's so much about it that makes it feel very cozy, and people who like cozy games will likely play Yoshi or enjoy Yoshi. Even though there are some differences from traditional cozy games, or what we would traditionally classify as cozy.
Yeah, I would say like a Yoshi or Kirby title would definitely be on the like edge of the Venn diagram, like getting close to the border between, you know, like what is a fully cozy game versus what's a like action game. With both Kirby and Yoshi, yeah, they do have enemies. You do have like some sort of combat mechanic to fight them with. But it's presented in such a sort of like sandbox playroom type way, and punishment isn't like too severe for experimentation, that it does feel like these could be cozy games, but cozy games for people who actually want to like move around and like do something, meaning do something a little more action than like tending to my garden or like talking with townsfolk. Because there are people out there that are like, yeah, I do want this like really warm, welcoming feeling, but I don't want to be pulling carrots out of the ground, or I don't want to do something that feels tedious.
Chore-like. Yeah, because
chore-like,
it does seem like a lot of chore games get grouped into the coziness.
Yeah, and I think part of that kind of goes back to the meditative state, right? Like, it's cozy because it lures you into this, like, I don't know what's kind of scientifically there behind the feeling of coziness, but I think it is, like, kind of meditative. Like, a fair amount of cozy games would probably be meditative, trance-like, and in part of, like, building a trance, it's, like, lulling your mind into subroutines, and this would be, like, listening to the calm music, checking my carrots, cleaning the leaves out the gutter. All right, now I gotta cook dinner, feed it to the person next door, go back to my house, now do the rest and do it all over again to the same song. Whereas that's going to be very cozy, but it's also probably for some not going to feel super eventful. So like having a Kirby game would be like, oh yeah, I know this whole place is like fun, you know, similar to Mario Odyssey. I know this place is fun and I can just kind of goof around and do what I want, but there's a chain chomp nearby, right? Like, even though there is one and I might get bit on the butt, it's simply a nip on the butt. It's not like I'm being like chewed up and actually feel like my character is in severe danger. I know I can kind of like do something to either bonk him out of existence or turn him into my ally. And that is like 1 to 2 layers of cozy removed, you know, once the chain chomp and its behavior gets introduced to the picture. But because the world is so overwhelmingly like playful and forgiving, the biggest thing, right, is like it creates that layer of coziness that the player can get into.
Yeah, I'm wondering if, like, maybe the existence of a boss fight should immediately disqualify something from coziness. You know, I was thinking about, like, going back to Kirby, you know, it's like, even though the boss fights are not particularly difficult, there is a boss meter bar that you have to monitor, and you have to make sure that throughout the level you're not taking too much damage, so that by the time you get to the boss, you have enough health, you know, and that takes a level of strategizing that I think is usually, I don't want to say removed from cozy games, because, you know, unpacking takes strategizing. Animal Crossing takes strategizing. You have to think about how you're spacing things. You know, like Stardew Valley would take strategizing if you're trying to, like, figure out the best way to make money from your crops or whatever. So, yeah, man, I don't know. It seems like a lot of... I keep getting tripped up in trying to create this, you know, or refine this definition, because, I don't know, the category is perhaps, like, best kept vague.
So on the note of boss fights, something I want to bring up is like a potential case to like just bounce off of. Like, what if Stardew Valley eventually there is a deadline? Like, I'm saying, just for the sake of this argument, like, what if in Stardew Valley there was a deadline and the boss fight, quote unquote, was just a like aesthetic judgment competition, almost like homeowners association comes around to check all the farms, and whoever has like the cleanest farm and most well presented farm is like the winner, or gets a key to the city, or whatever you were hoping to get by taking over the farm. Like, I absolutely would see that as a sort of boss fight in like a more loose sense. I know when we say
Day.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, when we say boss fight, I know there's a big thing of like, well, there must be combat. Well, I must like kill this enemy or defeat them in some way. But, you know,
it's a finale. It's not a combat encounter, but it's the grand finale. Everything you've been working for is like leading up to this moment.
You're also competing at that point. You're competing against potentially there could be a rival or something. Like, there may not even need to be a rival. Like, you could have a boss fight without building up a villain, right? Your boss fight could simply be this like Farmville battle royale, in terms of like, you know, we're judging every farm on the block, you know, make sure your stuff's in order. I feel like that could still keep it as a cozy game, like, even though you do have that sort of like, oh, 2 months from now, your farm is going to get inspected, like, you're still going to go through the process of every day. Like, I'm doing these chill activities. I'm listening to this chill music. I know all of this is building up towards this, like, one moment where I could really show off my creativity and, like, you know, my chore doing. But, like, does that still keep it in the cozy category?
I think it might change the way that a person plays the game, or maybe that most people play the game, depending on how much they were, you know, informing you in advance about the fact that everything was leading up to this one event. If they're pushing that from the beginning, then they're planting it in your mind that this is a competitive game and that you're going to have to be competing against either yourself or this arbitrary score or these other imaginary players, or maybe even real players. So the game may not be played in a cozy manner, or, you know, it may no longer, in which case we would say that it no longer would classify or it would no longer be characterized as a cozy game, right? If everybody who plays the game is now kind of in a race, essentially, to have the most efficient or the cleanest farm or whatever, it's no longer about the spirit of just kind of growing at your own pace and, like, allowing you to have that sense of self-exploration. You know, how would I organically go about doing this is what a cozy game should be asking you. Not, you know, let's put all these constraints on.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea of the oldest cozy game, or like what was the first game that was not, you know, it wasn't a puzzle game, it wasn't a, you know, Pong, it wasn't Mario, you know, like it wasn't a platformer, you know, it wasn't a sports game. What was the first game that you can think of that was supposed to be creating this kind of cozy vibe?
A cozy game that hit me really hard might have been Slime Rancher. I can't remember when exactly I encountered this game, but that game to me felt cozy. Slime Rancher. You have, like, this plot of land, and you have to take care of a bunch of slimes. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, they're just a bunch of, like, Jello balls
that came
with,
out in
like, cute
2017.
anime faces, right? Yeah. I mean, like I said, I didn't, like, dive into the cozy games all that much. I have played Skatebird. I have played Unpacking.
I'm talking about
The Sims considered a cozy game?
Like, what is
I could not consider The Sims a cozy game, dude. You fucking, people drown, people get set on fire, the Grim Reaper comes, burglar breaks into your house.
But you don't have any consequences if...
What do you mean? I lose my Sims. They burned on fire.
But you have a whole family. I mean, just create a new one. Like, it's not like it's...
That's not cozy to me.
Okay. I mean, the original Animal Crossing, you know, was...
You can't die in the original Animal Crossing.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's a game...
I also didn't like it. I played it. It was the one that, like, required you... It was on GameCube, right? It didn't come out on N64. Yeah, it required you to use a memory card. And I think we kind of briefly talked about that in a different piece of content. But, like, I just couldn't get down with it. Like, I mean, I was younger, you know, I needed Devil May Cry, basically. Like, my
I
eyes
didn't understand
and ears.
the seasons. I didn't understand that, like, you could, like, not everything was available when I was, you know, when we were kids like that, you know?
Yeah.
It was so boring. But I still think it was cozy. I think for the people who played it, I think the people who enjoyed it, that was, like, a proto-cozy game that we just didn't have the vocabulary for back then. But, I mean, that's... like, way older than Slime Rancher. Slime Rancher's like when you became aware of the concept of cozy games, perhaps, when you played that. And you were like, aha, I can file this into cozy games. But cozy games have to be at least, you know, like, at least more than 10 years old, right?
Yeah, no, that's why I said, you know, I'll speak off of my own memory with, like, cozy games rather than trying to comment on, like, which cozy game is the oldest, because, again, before Animal Crossing there must have been something there. Like, I think there was absolutely something available that would have fit the label of, like, cozy game, but I don't know how we would find that, honestly. Like, yeah, but you know, like, what's Animal Crossing before Animal Crossing?
Yeah I mean, The Sims, you know.
I don't agree.
I mean, maybe the original... We could, I mean, even go back to the original Pokemon Snap as, like, potentially a cozy game, but obviously it wasn't marketed that way, so it's, you know, I don't know, anachronistic to even try to categorize games that were that old. But a lot of games were based on combat and had playable characters and, you know, involved things like health and lives and game over. And so I think the advent of... It's difficult to try to pinpoint the earliest because... They didn't exist for so long, and you don't want to say something that's too late, right? I don't want to say a game that came out in 2005 because it's like, well, maybe there was a 90s game that I'm just not aware of or thinking of. So I see your hesitation, but there must be something that is like monumental or foundational, like the same way that we can identify like when this like Souls, like, you know, or Metroidvania, it's like, this thing is doing something brand new. We're naming a genre after this particular game because it was foundational. But we don't really have an equivalent with cozy games, I guess, right? There's nothing that really stands out and is like the most historic, the first cozy game.
Right. We have games that like really propelled it into the mainstream as like an idea, as a style of game, right? Like Stardew Valley, Animal Crossing, those two are big on the, hey, this is a farming based cozy game. But there are plenty of other cozy games as well, and I think, you know, it's just there can be cozy games in different styles. Like, we don't know if we'll find another unpacking game in like the next like 2 to 3 years. We don't know if there will be another kind of like spin-off Animal Crossing. But still, like, I don't know with The Sims, and, you know, maybe it's like a little bit different because you know, The Sims kind of like had different styles to it. Like, The Sims, I would say, is more sandboxy, similar to like Nintendo. Like, it's a very sandboxy, like, easygoing world or environment, but that you still run like risks in there, I guess. Like, it's not high octane action by any means, but I don't know if I would call it like super laid back gameplay either. That's kind of like a tricky part. I'm not sure, because like you can play it kind of like how you want, you know, unless there's some sort of like story mode where they're giving you like objectives to complete for your Sims, which was the case for The Sims 1 on GameCube. And, you know, that's kind of like how I primarily played it. I didn't get it for computer until like later on. But even then, yeah, you're trying to get your sim to do something, and you're managing however many things they can do in one day, all that jazz. Like, sure, like, you know, sans the whole like being able to have your player character killed, and I guess, you know, if you're only playing with one character as opposed to a family of characters, then like, yeah, it gets cozier if you're just thinking about it as the family unit. But like, still, the character's ability to die is like making it kind of like a huge difficulty to like put this into the cozy game category. Every other big game we've mentioned has a character who like doesn't get damaged at all, or a character that's like not even there in the area of unpacking, right?
Yeah.
No characters are even present.
Yeah, I mean, we can do almost like a phylogeny maybe of games where it's like, well, Stardew Valley was in part based on Harvest Moon, and Harvest Moon may have been based on another game, and track it, you know, trace back the games until we have like the true ancestor of coziness.
Yeah, you know, that is kind of interesting, like which one did come out first. I feel like Harvest Moon came out after Animal Crossing, but let's see. Okay, so Harvest Moon came out in August 96, April 14th, 2001. So Harvest Moon actually came out first, and Animal Crossing came after it. And then obviously Stardew Valley comes out like way further down the road and whatnot. So
it's a fun thought experiment, really. You know, like as like one way of potentially, if someone really wanted to like research and vet cozy games like all the way down, you know, like prime mover of cozy games, basically.
Yeah. That's real cool though, to know that Harvest Moon actually came out before Animal Crossing, and like not too long before it. It definitely seems like a natural evolution of ideas, and similar to how Stardew Valley kind of like almost brings it back down to grassroots, you know, going down a layer in terms of like graphical fidelity, but using that in order to like focus more on the mechanics and the world built around it, because the world is so important for these types of games, right? Whether that world is to create the tone, or if that world is like, we need to make a town and actually like make it, you know, feel lived in, and the town itself feel cozy. It's not like we're just trying to like put on some music, show a pleasant apartment, and have you like decorate it. We now need to like, factor in so many larger things and still hit that sort of like sense of comfort and warmth while playing the game.